Hello, everybody. We are here at the European Parliament. You can see the beautiful hemicycle behind me. It is a fantastic setting to talk about the subject that I would like to talk about today, which is speed in interpretation at the European Parliament, in particular in plenaries, like the one behind me. It is very often the case that speakers get very little time to speak, which, of course, is one of the many factors influencing in them speaking fast, and therefore in the problem of speed in conference interpreting. We're going to talk about the problem of speed in conference interpreting from the point of view of the interpreter today. But we won't be talking about the hemicycle in particular, or plenaries in particular, just a general point of view. What can you do when you have a very fast speaker and you have to work? There are very many things that influence in speed and in the subjective perception of speed. And the first thing I think you need to do is to prepare for that eventuality. Documentation and meeting preparation are essential elements in not feeling that it's as fast as you would have felt if you were not prepared. So it all starts long before the meeting. You hope to get as much information as possible on the meeting and on the speakers and on what will be going on and what will be talked about. It is a very different thing, for example, to have the name of an agency read at top speed if you've never heard it, than to have it read at top speed if you have it written down in front of you in the original language. And it's even better if you have it written down in front of you in the translation to your own language, which you can then use to read. So it all starts well before the meeting, as with anything in interpreting, but for speed, it's also the case. You have to get used to fast speakers and you have to get used to what's going to happen in a meeting as far as you can in order to be better able to respond. And there's a very salient example of this, an extreme case. I'm going to be talking about extreme cases that happened to me when I was starting. I was in a meeting and we were voting amendments. So it was one of these very boring, long voting when there were people, there was a chair reading out the amendments, in favour, against, etc. And in the middle of this very long drudgery of voting, which is very automatic, in the middle of that, suddenly somebody asked for the floor and they wanted to read a compromise amendment. And it was my turn to do it. And the speaker read the text in their original language at top speed, a very complicated legal text with a very complicated language and technical language at that. And what did I do? I had the text in front of me, and in which was translated, because we had the whole block of amendments, and it was translated into Spanish in this case, and I had it in front of me, and I read amendment number whatever it was, exactly, because it had been said, this is amendment whatever it was. And I remember the colleague beside me said, "Oh, look, you had the amendment in front of you. That's so good." And I said, "Well, yeah, I know. I mean, I've been following the votes and I've been flipping the pages so I could be in the right place at the right time in case it happened, because I've had bad experiences before when this happened, and I wasn't ready." A few months before, I had the opposite experience, the opposite extreme of a situation with speed, which was that pretty much the same situation. Amendments were being voted, and suddenly somebody asked for the floor. And in this case, it was slightly different because they read two versions of the amendment. They were changing what was written. I did not have the text in front of me. And they read one version at top speed. Again, very technical, very dense written language for a legal text. And the second version also at top speed. And I listened, I was like, there's no way I can interpret this. I don't know where to hold on. It's half a sentence to the end of another half a sentence. It sounds very similar. The two of them are very similar. What's the difference? What is the point? What is the message this speaker is trying to get across? What, if she's saying not this, but this, what's the difference? So I stopped talking. I thought as fast as I could. I tried to analyze as fast as I could. Stopped talking. Worked out that the difference was one word. Or this time there was no sound coming out of the Spanish booth. I was really, really nervous. And identified the word, identified the difference. I was like, well, it's the amendment that starts. Well, the difference is this word. In the version I'm proposing, I'm adding this word. And switched off the mic thinking, oh my God, I've done a really, really bad thing because I did not have the text in front of me. Hence, months later, I tried to have it every time. And it worked out. I explained what the speaker meant. The message of the speaker was there. I did not translate the words of the speaker at all, because it was impossible, but I worked out what the point that she was trying to get across was, and that point that the speaker wanted to get across to the audience, and I was an intermediary for, was very effectively put across. And the question I'd like to ask now is, would it have been better if I had had the text? Would it have been better if I had read the first version of the amendment also at top speed in my language, and the second version also at top speed in my language, without actually having the time to identify the difference and even emphasize it as I was reading it? Would that have been a better interpretation? I don't know, I put it to you. Think about it. I happen to think that in this particular case, I did a much better interpretation in the second occasion, which wouldn't have worked for the first one because of the circumstances anyway, but in the second occasion, although it was by desperation, it was actually a better interpretation, it was a better job. The message was much easier for the audience to understand in that way, and that is, of course, the goal of interpreting. These are two extreme cases, but I think they serve to illustrate, if you combine them in different ways, pretty much every situation where speed might be a factor when you're trying to survive with speakers in the booth. In every instance of something being read fast, whether it is a long text that is all being read, or whether it's somebody suddenly saying the name of an organization really fast, or a list of numbers really fast, if you have them in front of you, it's much better. If you know them by heart, like the name of an organization you might know by heart, or you might, for example, have through experience made sure you commit to your memory the salient numbers of the budgetary procedure, in autumn, because it will come up every time, and it will. If you know it, or if you have it in front of you, if you have it underlined on a piece of paper, it's going to be a lot easier to do, and you're going to do your job a lot better. So preparation in advance, documentation in advance, knowledge, because many things come back again and again, and not necessarily in the text, but you should know from however many years you've been working. All of that is one of the things that will help very, very often when something is being said very fast, whether long or short. And the other way you can react, and the combination of both of them is basically the skill that interpreting is in the case of speed as well. The other way you can react is also by being fast. I mean, you can only react to speed with speed, that's clear. But in some cases, it means also talking very fast, the same way if the speaker is talking very fast. In other cases, what it means is talking as slowly as you can while you think as fast as you can, in order to identify the message and make sure at least that doesn't get lost. Because if you've got the message, it's fine. If you've got all the words and the message is just there, isn't there, you, I think, have not done a good job as an interpreter. If you have to choose, if you can get everything, that's even better. But with speed in the process, very often you will have to choose. Learning how to choose obviously gets easier over time with experience, and it's something that needs to be practiced, of course, on the job or when you're training. Try and practice as much as possible what to do in all these different situations with and without a text, with and without the knowledge of the acronyms and the numbers and the things in advance, with or without having to look them up. Passing them on to colleagues when somebody else is on the microphone, but you're next to them, also very, very important. All of this comes together and can help achieve the best interpretation possible in the circumstances, when knowing that speed is obviously making your job and the understanding by the audience, which is also your job, which is the job, harder. And in every situation, that's the combination of things that you might have. It applies to consecutive as well. If you have somebody who speaks very fast, well, you have to use the opportunity that with consecutive you're actually in the room with them. So you might want to tell them they're speaking too fast for their message to come across as clearly as you would like to the audience. But they might be reading something out, so you might want to get hold of that document if you haven't been given it before, which unfortunately does happen, even on the job.
or at least glance at the acronyms and at the official titles of the people he's addressing or they're addressing, because in a consecutive situation it might be very formal. It's not a situation where you want to just say you want to say Mr. So-and-so, Honorable so-and-so, the whole official title of the person, and of course the name pronounced as well as you possibly can. So if the only way to get that, because you haven't had preparation, is to glance at the notes of the speaker, that might be an option. As much as you can prepare in advance, also an option. Find documents that are not necessarily part of the official documentation as well, and get that and write it down or underline it in some way. All very useful things. And then if the worst come to the worst, at least, which is harder than it sounds, try and get the message across the most important thing, or the most important things amongst everything that the speaker is saying, that the speaker wants the audience to understand. That is what you need to select if there's no other choice, and make sure that that's clear. In the context of this situation, choosing, if you're a PIVO, you have to bear in mind that there's another layer to this factor, where there's the speaker and the audience are in the middle. The audience has to understand what the speaker means. But if there's a PIVO situation where other colleagues are taking what you're saying and then rendering it to their audience in turn, then you have to be even more clear, because you're speaking to colleagues who are also interpreting, and therefore have a much more charged mental activity than just the audience who is only trying to listen and who can filter things out themselves. Whereas you have to, I think, give the courtesy to colleagues of not reading things at top speed if you're being a PIVO, if you can help it, to help their job and therefore your job work as best as possible. So, as with everything else, being a good interpreter, rendering the message of the speaker to the audience through PIVOs or not, is a combination of as much preparation as possible, experience, and very, very, very fast thinking on the job. Thank you.